Tonight's episode includes a Layla Sleep and Dubs Labs affiliate link, which helps support the show at no extra cost to you. These are actually two brands that I use myself, so I am grateful they have been kind enough to work with us. I sleep on Layla's hybrid mattress, and I love that it gives you a soft side and a firm side in one mattress with cooling copper foam and supportive springs. Their signature K-POC pillow is also adjustable, breathable, and easy to shape to how you sleep. It was this pillow that first got me introduced to them. They have fairly long trial periods for most of their products, as well as free shipping. Use my Layla link in the show notes to see what fits your sleep best. The other product is rather new for me as well, but I've been using them non-stop these past few months. You know how regular headphones are too bulky or just straight up uncomfortable for sleeping? Well, that's where Dubs Labs headphones come in. They are incredibly thin, soft, on-ear sleep headphones designed to sit comfortably between your ear and your pillow, even if you sleep on your side. Link down below as well. Thanks for supporting the show. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where the world quiets down and your thoughts can loosen their grip. Tonight, you'll drift through a warm woodland at summer's gentlest hour, following the soft rustle of leaves as it leads you toward a hidden place of calm. Settle yourself in whatever way feels kindest. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears. Let your jaw unclench as if you're setting down something you didn't realize you were carrying. Feel the weight of your body being held, supported, with no need to do anything more. Breathe in slowly, as though you're sipping a peaceful scent from the air, and breathe out unhurried, letting the day's noise slide off you like rain from a broad green leaf. With each breath, you can soften. With each exhale, you can let go. Imagine a summer evening that doesn't ask anything of you. The light is honeyed and calm, the air is warm but gentle, brushed through with cool threads from shaded places. Somewhere close, leaves move in a slow rhythm, not a sharp wind, not a restless gust, just a quiet stirring, a tender shiver of green. Listen in your mind for that sound, the soft rustle of summer leaves. It's like a whisper you don't need to understand, only to hear. It invites you to rest, to drift, to follow without effort. And as the rustling becomes steadier, as if it's settling into its own soothing pattern, the story can shift. You don't have to hold it tightly. You can simply float beside it, watching it unfold the way you might watch cloud shapes change in a bright, sleepy sky. In the warm outskirts of a small village, where gardens ran wild with herbs and climbing flowers, there was a footpath that began without ceremony. It didn't have a sign or a gate. It was simply there, worn into the earth by gentle use and the passing of time. Some paths felt like errands. This one felt like an exhale. On a summer evening that moved with slow grace, a traveler wandered toward that footpath. The traveler's name did not matter much, not in the way names usually mattered. Still, the village folk, when they spoke of her with soft fondness, called her Mira, as if the name fit her quiet way of noticing things. Mira had been walking for days that blurred together, not because they were dull, but because they were unhurried. She wasn't chasing a destination. She was following the season. She carried a small bag that held simple comforts: a folded cloth, a bit of bread wrapped in paper, a smooth stone picked up near a stream, and a small notebook with pages that smelled faintly of wood pulp and sun. She moved like someone listening. The evening air was thick with green life. It carried the sweet dampness of soil cooling after a warm day. It carried the faint spice of crushed leaves. It carried the invisible drifting of pollen and the distant promise of wild berries. Overhead, the sky softened into pastel layers, and the light stretched long, turning everything it touched more tender. Mira reached the start of the path and paused, not from hesitation, but from respect. There was a sound there, a gentle sound that seemed to belong to the place itself. Leaves were rustling in the trees nearby, though there was no strong wind. It was the kind of rustle that felt like a lullaby, the kind that made the body remember how to settle. She stepped onto the path, and the earth gave slightly beneath her sandals, warm from the day's sun. The path was bordered by tall grasses that leaned in, brushing her ankles with feathery tips. The grasses made their own quiet music, a faint shushing sound that braided itself with the whisper of the leaves. As she walked, the village behind her grew softer, not abruptly gone, but gently fading, as if it were a candle being lowered behind frosted glass. The sounds of people, of doors closing, of distant laughter thinned and dissolved. In their place came the layered hush of the woodland, insects ticking in the undergrowth, a bird calling once and then falling quiet, the slow creak of a branch adjusting its weight. The trees here were summer-full, heavy with leaves. Their canopies formed a green ceiling with gaps where the sky shone through like pale silk. The light fell in gentle patches, warm on Mira's shoulders when she stepped into it, cool when she moved back under shade. The path curved, not sharply, but with the lazy ease of a river. It led her deeper, and as it did, the rustling of leaves seemed to follow her, sometimes ahead, sometimes beside her. It never felt like being pursued. It felt like being accompanied. Now and then, a leaf would drift down, slow and spinning, as if practicing how to fall. It might land on the path, bright green or touched with gold at the edges. Mira would step around it without thinking, as though it were a sleeping thing. She came to a place where the woods opened slightly, and there was a low stone wall half covered in moss. The stones were old, rounded by weather and time. Ferns grew between them in delicate fans. Mira ran her fingers along the moss, feeling its cool softness, and for a moment she stood very still. The rustle of the leaves here was different. It was closer, more intimate, as if the trees were speaking quietly among themselves. Above her, the branches shifted, and the leaves brushed against each other with a sound like a soft skirt swaying, like paper being turned gently, like 1,000 small sighs. Mira moved on. Further along, the path dipped toward a shallow stream. The water was clear enough to show smooth stones on the bottom, and it moved with a slow, patient gurgle. A small wooden footbridge crossed it, worn pale and satin smooth by countless footsteps. Mira stepped onto the bridge and paused at the middle, looking down. The water carried reflections of leaves and sky, wavering like a dream. When the leaves rustled, the reflections shimmered too, as though the sound could ripple through light. A small fish flicked its tail and vanished beneath a stone. The air above the stream was cooler, carrying the clean scent of wet rock and the faint sweetness of water plants. On the far side, the path continued into deeper shade. The trees grew closer together, their trunks dark and steady. Their roots rose from the ground like gentle waves, and the path wound among them as if respectfully asking permission. Somewhere in that deeper shade, Mira noticed a new layer in the sound of the woods. Beneath the leaves whispering, there was a low hum, almost like a distant chord held softly. It might have been the insects. It might have been the breeze itself. It might have been something older, something woven into the place. Mira's footsteps slowed. She didn't need to hurry. The evening was wide and welcoming. As she walked, she remembered something she had once heard in a kitchen filled with summer heat and the smell of bread. An elderly woman had spoken while kneading dough, her hands strong and gentle. The trees, the woman had said, keep stories in their leaves. In summer, they speak them aloud. Not with words, of course, but with that soft rustle. If you walk long enough, and if you don't try to force meaning, the sound will lead you to whatever part of yourself needs resting. At the time, Mira had smiled politely, as people do when they're offered a mystery they don't know how to hold. But now, in the deepening woods, with the leaves whispering over her head, the memory settled into her like something true. The path began to slope upward, and the air grew warmer again, as if the hill itself held onto the day's sunlight. The undergrowth changed. Ferns gave way to low shrubs, dotted with tiny pale flowers. Vines curled around tree trunks in lazy spirals. The scent of crushed herbs rose when Mira's sandals brushed the edge of the path. Then, as the trees parted, she saw it. A clearing, round and quiet, cradled by the forest like a bowl. The grass inside was short and soft, and in the center stood a single tree larger than any she had seen in these woods. Its trunk was wide enough that it felt less like a tree and more like a landmark, a presence. Its bark was textured and deep, with ridges that made patterns like slow waves. Its branches spread outward like arms offering shelter. And its leaves, oh, its leaves, were alive with that soft rustle. They moved in a rhythm that didn't match the air around them. The breeze in the clearing was gentle, barely enough to stir Mira's hair. Yet the leaves above her shifted as if they were breathing. The sound wasn't loud, it was tender. It wrapped the clearing in a veil of calm. Mira stepped onto the grass, and her feet sank slightly cushioned. The clearing felt cooler than the path, as if the tree gathered shade and held it kindly. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in dappled patterns that drifted across the ground like slow-moving patches of gold. She approached the great tree, and as she did, she noticed the roots. They rose from the earth in graceful arcs, making natural seats in small hollow spaces. Some roots were smooth from years of touch, as if many travelers had rested here. Others were rough with bark and moss. Between them grew tiny mushrooms the color of cream, and small delicate plants that looked like miniature ferns. At the base of the trunk was a shallow hollow, like a doorway that led nowhere, or perhaps somewhere only the tree understood. Inside that hollow sat a bowl made of wood, weathered and dark. The bowl was filled with dry leaves, summer leaves that had fallen even while green, their edges curled, their surfaces marked with veins like fine lines in a palm. Mira knelt and reached toward the bowl. The leaves inside were warm to the touch, as if they held a memory of sunlight. When her fingers brushed them, they made a soft sound, a tiny whisper against her skin. The rustling above seemed to deepen, as though the tree had noticed her. Not in a startling way, more like a room noticing when someone sits down, the air shifting, making space. Mira sat back on her heels and let herself simply be there. She listened. The leaves moved in gentle layers, some brushing, some fluttering, some barely trembling. The sound was like a soft rain that never fell, like a distant sea heard through a shell, like the hush of many pages turning in a library where everyone is sleepy and kind. And in that sound, Mira began to notice something else. A pattern, not a pattern she had to solve, not a puzzle, but a repeating softness. The leaves rustled in waves that rose and fell like breathing. When the sound rose, it felt like an inhale. When it felt like an exhale. Mira's body, without being told, began to follow. Her shoulders loosened further. Her hands rested in her lap. Her eyelids grew heavier, not from sudden sleep, but from ease. The clearing held her like a gentle cradle. Time softened. The sky above the leaves shifted toward deeper blue, and the sunlight turned more amber. Shadows lengthened. The air cooled in the spaces between rustles, then warmed again when the leaves whispered. Mira leaned back against the tree's trunk. The bark behind her was firm and steady, textured against her shoulder blades. She could feel the tree's quiet strength, the way it held itself upright without strain. It made her own spine feel less responsible for everything. She looked up through the canopy. The leaves were 1,000 shades of green. Some were bright and thin, catching the light. Others were darker, thick with summer's fullness. They overlapped in layers, making a shifting mosaic. Now and then, a small gap opened, showing a patch of sky, pale and calm. A bird landed on a branch high above. It settled, fluffed its feathers, and fell silent, as if it too had come here to rest. Mira's breath moved in slow, even waves. She didn't realize she was closing her eyes until they were closed. In the darkness behind her eyelids, the rustling became more vivid. It wasn't merely sound anymore. It was a sensation, a soft brushing, like being wrapped in a light blanket of air. It carried images without forcing them, as dreams sometimes do before sleep. She saw in her mind the woods in spring, when the leaves were new and tender. She saw sunlight pouring through them like warm tea. She saw rain sliding along their surfaces, gathering at the tips and falling in slow drops. She saw autumn too, faintly, as if the tree held that memory already. Leaves turning gold and copper, drifting down in quiet spirals. The images came and went, and Mira didn't chase them. She listened to the rustle. Somewhere near the base of the tree, a small creature moved through the grass. Perhaps a rabbit, perhaps a hedgehog, perhaps something even quieter. Mira didn't open her eyes. The clearing felt safe. It felt like a place where all creatures understood the importance of softness. The sound of leaves seemed to speak in a language older than words. If it carried meaning, it was the kind that didn't require thought. It was the meaning of shade, of shelter, of time passing gently, of being held by the world. Mira's hand, resting on the grass beside her, brushed against something smooth. She opened her eyes slightly and saw a small stone there, round and pale, with a faint spiral pattern. It looked like it might have come from the stream, though the stream was far below. She picked it up and held it in her palm. It was warm, as if it had been resting in sunlight before finding its way here. The spiral pattern was calming to look at, a gentle curve that suggested cycles and returns. Mira smiled, barely. She placed the stone back on the grass and let her hand relax again. The evening deepened. Fireflies began to appear at the edge of the clearing, their tiny lights blinking softly. They didn't swarm, they drifted, unhurried, like floating sparks of calm. Their glow reflected faintly on the leaves, making the canopy seem sprinkled with quiet stars. The rustling continued, steady and slow. Mira found herself thinking, not in sharp thoughts, but in soft impressions of all the places she'd walked. Dry roads with dust rising, busy markets with voices overlapping, windy hills where the grass hissed and bent, quiet rooms with candles burning low. And yet this clearing felt different. Not more important, not grander, but gentler in a way that sank deep. As her attention drifted, something subtle shifted in the air. The clearing seemed to grow slightly larger, as though the edges had softened. The shadows beneath the tree became deeper and more velvety. The fireflies' lights lingered longer. The rustling became even more rhythmic, like a lullaby settling into its most familiar part. Mira's eyes closed again, and in that closed-eyed quiet, she sensed a presence. Not a figure stepping out dramatically, not a voice demanding attention. It was more like the feeling of being joined by someone who sits down nearby without making a fuss. A soft, cool fragrance drifted through the air. Something like crushed mint, like wet leaves, like the faint sweetness of blossoms hidden in shade. The rustling above her shifted, and for a moment it sounded almost like gentle laughter. Mira's breathing remained slow. She did not startle. The clearing had already taught her that surprises here would be soft. When she opened her eyes, she saw that the air in front of her shimmered faintly, as if the light itself were breathing. There, near a cluster of roots, stood a small figure. It was not tall, not imposing. It was shaped like a person, but its edges were blurred as though it were made from mist and leaf shadow. Its hair looked like strands of dried grass, lit from within. Its eyes, when it turned toward Mira, were dark and kind, like deep pools beneath a canopy. It wore a cloak that seemed woven from thin green leaves. The leaves on the cloak moved quietly, even when the air was still, making a soft sound that matched the trees' rustle. The figure did not speak aloud. Instead, Mira felt a warmth in her chest, a gentle understanding that arrived without effort. This was a guardian of the clearing, not in a stern way, but in a nurturing way, like a caretaker who keeps blankets folded and lamps low. The guardian moved closer, its steps silent on the grass. It held out a hand, and in its palm lay a single leaf. The leaf was different from the others. It was a translucent green, almost glowing. Its veins formed delicate patterns that looked like tiny rivers. The edges of the leaf were soft, not sharp, and it seemed to hum faintly, as if it held a quiet song. Mira reached out slowly and accepted the leaf. As soon as it touched her skin, she felt a wave of calm roll through her, deeper than before. It was like sinking into warm water, like being tucked in, like finally letting go of a worry she had forgotten she carried. The guardian tilted its head slightly as if listening to the tree. Then, with a movement as gentle as dusk, it gestured upward toward the canopy. Mira followed the gesture with her eyes. Above, the leaves were moving in a pattern that seemed almost intentional, like a dance. The rustle rose and fell, and within it, Mira began to hear something she hadn't heard before, a melody. Not a clear tune with notes she could name, but a musical flow, a lullaby made of whispering green. The tree was singing, not with voice, but with leaves. The guardian's presence felt like an invitation. Listen and let the song carry you. Mira leaned back further against the trunk, cradling the glowing leaf in her palm. The leaf's coolness balanced the warmth of her skin. Her fingers curled loosely around it. The melody and the rustle became more vivid. It told a story without words, of summer mornings when light arrives early and soft, of afternoons when shade is precious, of evenings like this when the world slows and the air turns sweet, of nights when the canopy holds the stars like secrets. Mira's mind drifted with the melody. The guardian moved to sit on a root nearby. It was close enough to be comforting, far enough to be unobtrusive. It folded its hands in its lap and looked up at the leaves with a serene expression, as if it had listened to this song for centuries and never grown tired. Fireflies floated closer, their lights blinking in time with the rustle, as though the whole clearing was participating in the lullaby. Mira's breathing became even slower. Her thoughts began to dissolve at the edges, turning into soft shapes rather than sharp sentences. The glowing leaf in her hand pulsed faintly, not like a beating heart, but like a steady ember. It seemed to synchronize with the tree's rhythm, and Mira's body followed. Inhale as the rustle rose. Exhale as it fell. The forest beyond the clearing felt distant now, not gone, but softened. The path that had brought her here seemed like a dream she could revisit later if she wished. For now there was only this place, this tree, this sound. The guardian lifted a hand and made a small motion, as if plucking something invisible from the air. It held its fingers close, and Mira saw a tiny thread of light between them, thin as spider silk. The guardian twined the light gently, and it became a small glowing loop, like a ring of moonlight. With care, the guardian placed the loop on the grass near Mira's feet. It expanded slowly, becoming a faint circle of light on the ground, wide enough to encompass Mira and the base of the tree. The light was soft and dim, more a feeling than a glow. It did not push back darkness harshly. It simply made the clearing feel even more safe, even more held. Within that circle, the air seemed warmer, as if wrapped in an invisible shawl. The leaves continued their lullaby. Mira's eyelids grew heavy again. She let them close, and this time she did not reopen them quickly. The images behind her eyes returned, gentler now. She saw herself as a child, lying in tall grass, watching clouds drift. She saw her hands building small forts from fallen branches, the smell of sap, sticky and sweet. She heard distant voices calling her home, not urgently, but with affection. Then the images shifted. She saw a long corridor made of trees, their trunks forming pillars. Their leaves overhead created a ceiling of green light. The corridor was filled with the soft rustle, and as she walked through it in her mind, each step felt lighter, as if the path were carrying her rather than the other way around. At the end of the corridor was a doorway, made of woven branches. Beyond it, there was a room that seemed made of summer itself, walls of dappled light, a floor of moss, a ceiling of leaves. In the center was a bed, not a bed like in houses, but a nest of soft grass and petals, cradled by roots. Mira's mind drifted toward that nest, and her body, leaning against the tree, felt as though it were already there. Her muscles loosened, her hands relaxed. The glowing leaf remained in her palm, but even the act of holding it required no effort. The guardian's presence, steady and quiet, remained nearby, like a nightlight. Outside the clearing, night began to settle fully. The sky deepened into velvet. A few stars appeared in the gaps between leaves. Somewhere far away, an owl called once, a soft sound that did not disturb the lullaby, only added a deeper note to it. The leaves rustled. The rustle seemed to gather all the gentle sounds of summer and weave them together. The hum of insects, the sigh of cooling earth, the faint crackle of a twig settling, the quiet pulse of sap moving inside the tree. It was as if the clearing itself were breathing. Mira's dreams began to form more clearly now, not sharp but steady. She dreamed of being a leaf, not a leaf falling or being blown around, but a leaf held in place, attached to the branch, basking in sunlight. She felt the warmth of the day soaking into her surface. She felt the coolness of shade passing over her. She felt the slow movement of air around her and the way she could respond with a gentle tremble. In the dream, she understood that rustling was not restless. It was communication. It was comfort. It was a way of saying, all is well, all is moving as it should. There is nothing you must do. She dreamed of the tree's roots. They reached deep into the earth, into layers of cool darkness, into places where water waited patiently. The roots did not hurry, they did not strain. They simply were, anchoring the tree, drawing what was needed, offering steadiness to everything above. Mira's body felt the lesson of the roots. She sank into her resting place, allowing gravity to do its gentle work. She let the tree hold her. She let the earth hold the tree. She let the night hold the woods. The guardian still nearby began to hum without sound, a vibration in the air that blended with the leaf song. It felt like a promise. This place remembers how to rest. A breeze finally moved through the clearing, a real breeze now, mild and cool. It stirred the grass. It brushed Mira's cheek. It passed through the canopy, and the rustling grew slightly louder, like applause made of whispers. The sound swelled and then softened again. A few leaves drifted down, landing gently around Mira like soft confetti. They did not land on her face. They seemed to avoid disturbing her, as if the leaves themselves were considerate. The glowing leaf in her hand dimmed slightly, as though it were satisfied. Its light became subtler, more internal, more like warmth than brightness. Mira's dreams drifted into deeper waters. She dreamed of a lake hidden in the forest, its surface perfectly still. The trees around it leaned inward, their leaves rustling softly, and each rustle sent invisible ripples across the air, not disturbing the water, only the reflections. The reflections moved, shimmering, and the stars above the lake seemed to sway. In the dream, Mira lay beside the lake on a bed of moss. The guardian sat nearby, tracing circles in the air. Each circle became a soft ring that floated upward, joining the leaves, becoming part of the canopy's whispering song. The dream did not demand plot or resolution. It was simply a place to drift. Back in the clearing, Mira's breathing was slow and deep. Her face was smooth. Her shoulders were loose. The tree behind her stood steady, its bark cool and strong. The circle of light on the grass around her remained faintly glowing, like a gentle boundary of peace. The fireflies' lights blinked more slowly now, as if they too were growing sleepy. Some settled into the grass, their glow dimming. The guardian's form became even softer, its edges more like mist. It leaned back against a root and closed its eyes, listening to the leaves as if the lullaby were tucking it in as well. The clearing, the tree, the leaves, the night, all of it seemed to be moving toward stillness, not abruptly, but like a slow settling of feathers. The leaf song began to quiet, not stopping, but smoothing into a softer and softer whisper. The rustle became lighter, as though the leaves were speaking in the gentlest voice they had. Mira's hand opened slightly. The glowing leaf rested against her palm without needing to be held. Its light was now only a hint, like the last glow of dusk behind closed curtains. The guardian's circle of light on the grass thinned, becoming a faint sheen, then a feeling rather than something seen. The clearing felt safe even without it, as if safety had seeped into the ground itself. Night air cooled the skin with kindness. The tree's canopy moved less. The rustling became intermittent, like a final few pages turning before a book is closed. Mira's dreams sank deeper and the images became quieter, less like scenes, more like soft darkness filled with peace. The forest held its breath, then exhaled. A final gentle wave of leaves whispered overhead, a sound like a good night spoken close to the ear. The fireflies dimmed. The owl far away did not call again. The stream below continued its quiet moving, but it felt very far like background to sleep. Everything softened. The clearing became a cradle of stillness. And in that stillness, sleep came easily, like a familiar friend sitting down beside Mira, placing a light hand on her shoulder and letting her drift. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.